and French simultaneous translation is available to viewers who will join through the Zoom session. Welcome back from the break, everyone. And it is such a thrill to be here and to be a part of the final session for this week's conference. And this final session is a conversation with Sickboy podcast, very popular podcast. And we're so looking forward to learning from them. If I could just ask you ahead of time, just a couple of little things, just remember that this conference is designed for and by people living with pain. And we've done our very best to design it to create a brave and safe space for people who are living with pain. And just before heading forward, a huge thank you to our conference sponsors, Pain BC, the Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research Chronic Pain Network, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research Institute and Musculoskeletal Health and Arthritis, the Partnership for Engagement of Patients with Pain Research Project. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. I'd like to now introduce our panelists today. We have Sickboy hosts Jeremy Saunders and Taylor McGilvery.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, thank you.
Along with special guests Virginia McIntyre.
Hi, everyone.
And Natasha Trehan. Just thrilled to be able to pass over the mic to this amazing panel today. Away you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody out there in the ether, wherever you're tuning in from across the country. Like you heard, my name is Jeremy Saunders. This is Taylor McGilvery. We're the 2 out of 3 co-hosts of Sickboy podcast. And we're thrilled. We're thrilled to be a part of such an important conference. And the fact that we're getting to close this off just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, our third co-host will be parachuting in through an opening in the roof sometime at an unannounced time during the conversation.
Not true. We are so delighted to be sitting down with Virginia and Natasha. Virginia is the president and executive director of People in Pain Network. And I know we're going to have some things to hear from you, Virginia, about your experience with pain after a 2009 shoulder surgery. Curious to know more about that. Mm-hmm. And Natasha is a second-year university student studying biomedical science in the French immersion stream, extra hard, at the University of Ottawa. And
dial up the difficulty.
She was diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis at the age of 13. Guys, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
We're so excited to have you. And I guess the first question is, how are you guys doing today?
Doing great. I think this is such a treat to be here on the last session today, and it's been great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I'm doing great as well.
Good. Well, good to know that we're all feeling good going into this, and hopefully we can keep the spirits high. One thing, the way I'd like to kind of kick this off, very rare do we get to have 2 guests at the same time when we're recording a podcast. But you know, before I actually get into that, one little housekeeping rule, I want to put this out to all the people listening at home. Throughout the conversation, if you have questions that come up that you are dying to know, feel free to put those into the chat, into the Q&A section. And every so often I'll be checking in with Jennifer to make sure that if we have any questions, that we hit them. Instead of doing a Q&A at the end, we'll kind of check in as we go through the conversation.
One thing that I wanted to bring up there about having 2 guests on, in particular in this, with the topics that we're going to cover is like how, and we'll get into it obviously, but the 2 different sort of paths through which you come to this experience. You know, one being an autoimmune condition, and one being something that's coming from something that kind of just like pops up out of nowhere after what I'm assuming, we'll find out, of course, what I'm assuming is a sort of like routine surgery or repair on your shoulder. So that's I think that's really interesting, giving those 2 really different perspectives on pain.
Well, then let's get into that. Virginia, we'll start with you. I'm dying to know what's your pain origin story. We'd love to hear it.
All right. well, I had a workplace injury. I do work in healthcare, and I ended up having to have a shoulder surgery. I had a rotator cuff tear, and this left me with this excruciating back pain that they seemed to not know where it was coming from or what it was. And all the questions, the answers would be is the surgery went well, the shoulders went well, and then I ended up developing an allodynia, which is when you get this light touch bothers you, and myofascial pain in my back, and because it's like most of them, because they was abnormal, and that it was often dismissed and overlooked.
What was the pain? What was the pain? I'm really familiar with rotator cuff pain. Growing up playing hockey, I probably had like a 3-year period where I was like, I was going to an acupuncturist, I was seeing osteo. I just saw everybody because my shoulder just couldn't. It just had perpetually had issues in the rotator cuff, and it seemed like it was just almost impossible for anybody to really nail down what was going on. But I just remember it being really uncomfortable. What was the pain? What was that pain like versus the pain that sort of ensued after your surgery? Was it a similar type of, like, was it the pain of the shoulder that continued, or is it a completely different realm of sensation?
Oh, completely different, because the first one was the shoulder was right anterior at the front of the shoulder, and was just a stabbing pain. And the surgery did fix it up. And then I developed this pain in my back, right on the medial border of scapula. And that was just like you had knives and burning knives and stabbing in it, just every movement. And every time you see them, they look at the shoulder and not the back. I'm like, but there's pain there. Right. Yeah, it was totally different in a wider area it covered.
And what, like, the pain that ensued after the surgery, was it pretty immediate, or was this like, after recovery from the surgery itself?
When you have a surgery and then they have you on these high medications.
Yeah.
So when it started coming off of them after about 3 or 4 days, I was weaning off, and all I could feel was this pain in my back.
Natasha, what about you? What's your pain origin story?
Well, I was 13 when I was diagnosed with arthritis, so I feel like that was shocking because, you don't think kids get arthritis. Like it doesn't match up, but that's the reality of it. I was not super active, but I played tennis, I played piano, and I just started developing pain in my fingers. It kind of moved around my body, and then it was like, you have arthritis.
I watched your documentary short earlier today, and you mentioned how the first thing that people think of when they think of arthritis is old people get arthritis. Kids don't get arthritis, and it really threw me back to the first time that we talked about juvenile arthritis on the podcast, which was many years ago now, and having and being faced with that same thought myself. Like a lot of the things that we talk in the podcast, our guests are really highlighting those things to us that we have lived with ourselves, like those preconceived notions, which was definitely one of them for us, that, arthritis is something that, somebody gets later in life, and kids getting arthritis is, like, how does that happen? I thought you had to be old to get arthritis. And
what did that pain look like for you, Natasha? Like, how was the pain manifesting in your body specifically?
So it was definitely sharp, throbbing pain, but it's more so the inflammation. So with that pain comes swelling. And I just found that a lot of my fingers were swollen, and then it went to my feet, and it was just painful and swollen, hot, red, inflamed, that sort of thing.
One thing that I'm kind of curious about in speaking to people who develop sort of a chronic pain condition, is the types of conversations that you have with healthcare providers surrounding what that issue is. We've done this show now for 7 years, and we've talked about chronic pain here and there, but we've never really honed in on just the notion of chronic pain as like a full episode. And so one thing I'm curious about is what is your experience with your healthcare's providers notion of chronic pain? Like, Virginia, for you, for example, you come into the surgery, you start having pain in your scapula. Did you ever get to a point where you heard from someone, oh, well, this is what we call chronic pain?
No. Years later, no,
Yeah.
I think it was really the 5th physiotherapist I went to 2 years later. All I could say was the shoulder's fine, the shoulders move fine. The actual word chronic pain, I would say at least 2 years into my journey till I got into pain clinic, actually the pain clinic in Halifax, before it was even told me what it was. I was totally oblivious to what was going on.
So were you going along thinking, well, this has to be some type of, there must have been some type of mistake with the surgery where they they cut a muscle and it's been torn or something, like, was that sort of what you were going along with?
Initially I was going along with something like that. There had to be something going on, or and then I thought, well, maybe the scapula is winging us or something with that. But initially, and I mean, I went to osteopaths, 5 physiotherapists, surgeons, another surgeon, doctors, and nobody.
I'm really I feel like this experience of like a long and sometimes unanswered or journey with very, in the medical system, with very few answers, is like starting to resonate with me. Not in my personal experience, but I just had a daughter, and things are starting to, like small things coming up with her, and I find myself worrying that there won't be an answer when we go to see the doctor, and that will be, we'll be redirected to another specialist or another, and I'm going, oh my God, like I'm really starting to feel on a more personal level the experience that we have heard from a lot of our guests, which is, it took me 5, 8, 10 years to go from when I first noticed that something was wrong until I started to get answers, or I started to feel like I was being heard by the medical system. And I know, and pain seems like something that is this, like chronic pain seems like something that is this like mystical sort of, unanswered, like formless,
vague.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
And it seems like there's like, am I right in that notion that that's sort of what you experience in the medical system, is that it's kind of this like thing out here that we really don't have much language to describe, or why it happens or where it's coming from?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what happens too is because they don't understand it, they dismiss you. They'll walk away, or they'll, say it's all in your head. But I think the answers are there. It's just there's very few clinicians with the answers. So you get into a specialized clinic, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier that I'm not familiar with, and I'm sure that a number of the people that are attending the conference are very familiar with. But for my own sake, because I'm a ding dong and don't know much about anything, what is did you say allodynia? Allodynia.
Allodynia. I think that's how you say it. It's a very light touch hurts. Like the wind in the car. If I don't have a shirt on my back, when the wind is the car, if I have the wind, the breeze of the wind will bother my back. It'll hurt.
My goodness.
That very light touch. And there's certain days, certain types of clothes I can't wear. It's the rubbing of it. It will hurt. On
my God.
One half of my back.
Oh, okay. So it is very localized. It's not. It's to that one. Yeah, to that one spot. Wow, that's. That sounds highly annoying.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, annoying might be somewhat offensive, possibly, but yeah. Natasha, with your experience, what does pain look like for you on a like a day-to-day basis? Is it something that you deal with every day? Is it something that flares up? I know that arthritis, it can be like a come and go type of experience. What is it for you?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was 13. I'm 19 now, so it's been 6 years of fun. But from I guess like 3 or 4 years in, originally when I was diagnosed, it was like constant pain every day, nonstop. I could not write anymore, couldn't type anymore, could barely walk, but then I got onto medications, which helped. And same with what Virginia did. Like I went physio, occupational therapist,
Mm.
herbal medicine. Like I was desperate to find answers. And eventually it kind of went back to medication to help my pain. But ever since then, it's a fluctuating condition. So, when I wake up in the morning, it hurts. And when I go to sleep, it gets better. But that's only
Mhm.
recently. Whereas like a year ago, I didn't deal with pain all the time. And now it's like this year, this month specifically, I wake up in pain every day. So it's like I couldn't even tell you like I'm in pain all the time. Like it changes so much that it's just like a mystery.
Yeah, yeah. That the thing about the note on feeling desperate for answers, I can imagine that when it comes to conditions like this, there's an element to trying to find the like the solution to finding ease in any way possible. So one of the things that I'm kind of curious about is pain management, and how that differs between the two of you. Like, and also like with pain management, I'm sure, we talk a lot about pain management on the show, and oftentimes, like for example, Taylor, you were in a pretty severe car accident a few years ago, and I know that the only solution for you at the time when you were going through that was opioids. Like Dilaudid was something that you were prescribed, and that's a really tricky road to go down. There's a lot of risks associated with that. So I'm curious, like I guess Virginia, to start with you, what were the early days, what were the options that were given to you to kind of combat the pain that you were experiencing? And over the span of the years that you've been dealing with this, like what are the different solutions that you've tried to find, or alleviations that you've tried to use to try to get yourself to a place where you can function?
And I'm sure for a lot of the early days, it was everybody you go to, you really got another medication.
Yeah.
And, you really did one medication after another medication. And I got so desperate. You walk away with a purse full of medication. So you get desperate and you take a few of them at a time. You do what you need to do. You have a little bit of wine with it, and then you take a few more. You just spiral in a really dark pit, a really hole. You're not working, you're not doing anything but just popping whatever they're giving you, because that's all they're giving you. And nobody understands, no social circle, nothing. As I got into the pain clinic and I learned what was happening and things started to change, I now go for what's called trigger point injections for the myofascia, and learning what helps for me: heat and cold, taking rest, pacing, prioritizing my week. I literally have a calendar and I look at my week. Okay, I got one meeting this night. Okay, I get this one, and I really prioritize. I work part-time. I really scale back how I work, what I do with my work now. It's nutrition. I was out to visit my brother a few weeks ago, and going back, and it's like, when you're visiting someone and you just eat junk, that points in, my pain is up. And so I need to be mindful of those things. I practice meditation. So it's really a really modified lifestyle has changed. But with doing all that, I'm a runner. I'm able to run again. I'm not able to do marathons, but I am able to run again. I'm able to work part-time. I'm able to come off on all the meds except some Tylenol with the treatments. I've been able to spread my treatments apart. So with changing how I do things and learning more and more, which I continuously do, I've been able to really function again and do things.
And those like alternative treatments, focusing on diet, meditation, even managing your week to week. Are those things that you had to learn yourself, or were those things that were given to you by certain professionals in the the field of pain?
So when I finally got into the QE2, into the pain clinic, you do a set of classes, self-management classes. So they introduce you to it. Then it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out what's going to work, learning how to do meditation, whether you need videos or podcasts or not, and can you do it in your own when you need to? It's a lot of trial and error. And by being involved in the pain world, I continue to learn from other people too, 'cause I run this peer support groups too, and what they're doing, and continues to tweak things.
It's such a when you mentioned the meditation, I was thinking about this conversation earlier today, and I was kind of thinking like, what's my relationship with pain, and you know, the experiences that I've had, which is like largely acute pain where there is a hopefully predefined end to that. You know, that's like, you know, once this bone is not broken anymore, or once this you know, once this fever is broken or whatever, that it'll be gone, versus the experience of living with pain on a day-to-day basis for the foreseeable future, if not the indefinite future. And I thought about how my experience with pain is I don't have to work with my psychology very much on it, because it kind of comes with this, you know, in 3 to 6 weeks, this will be more or less gone. And I know that. And so I don't really have to think much about it. I just kind of have to deal with the physical symptoms of it versus dealing with pain on chronically. And how much your psychology, how important that is, and how you sort of nurture your psychology, and how it affects your psychology kind of really affects your outcomes. And when you say something like, you know, practicing meditation, like how important your psychological perception of your pain, how important that is in your in managing your physical manifestation of that pain. Like, how like for both of you, what is that experience like, dealing with it from a psychological level to deal with the physical sensations?
I think for like the longest time, I felt like, okay, I really can't do anything anymore, just because I was in elementary school, was in high school, now I'm in university, and like the whole social life, it's like I need to think about whether or not I want to go out with people. Am I going to be in pain the next day? Like there's just so many things to think about. But over a period of time, I kind of had to train my mindset, and you know, I can say no to things. And that took a really long time for me to like come to that and say, okay, if I'm in pain, I need to say no. And over a period of time and practicing that and saying no to things, it's definitely helped in terms of how I can now manage my pain.
And I gotta say, at 19,
that's hard. Notwithstanding,
I'm 34 and I still don't know how to say no. So like, kudos to you, because that really is that's a hard thing to do. You know, especially at a young age, especially at an age where, you know, there
FOMO.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like when I was 19, I prioritized social experiences far more than I do now as a more bigger boy. But
you had to deal, and you were dealing. And Jeremy lives with CF. He didn't mention that yet, which is crazy.
Right.
He didn't say that. But dealing with your CF, and knowing that when you prioritize social stuff, you're probably going to suffer with your CF.
Yeah. CF being cystic fibrosis, for anybody listening who doesn't know. And Virginia, before we get into how you manage the mental side of things, Natasha, one thing I'm curious to know is, what does pain management look like for you on a day-to-day basis today?
Yeah, so I definitely have my medications, which are ongoing, but I use like wrist braces and compression gloves and all those sort of tools to help me out. I definitely still struggle with pain management. I tried meditation for a while because my sister got me into it. But you know, I always have excuses. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I've tried so many things. I've tried like yoga, just many different things and alternative therapies and all that stuff. But on a daily basis now, it's just not aggravating my joints as much as I can. Topical stuff here and there. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And Virginia, the you know, the mental health side of things, what does that look like for you?
It's, you know, like I think Natasha said something important there, learning to say no, learning to practice gratitude. I mean, to the point we learn to say no, we actually in their support groups come up with ideas, teaching them how to say no. Oh, I can't this time, but I will another time. Really, because we don't say no. And if we don't set these boundaries, practice the meditation, practice gratitude, try not to let things get to you. Maybe this just isn't important, or not get, because as soon as you do and you get stressed, things just get oversensitized fast.
Yeah, the stress is just going to add to the pain in general. Yeah, I one thing that I'm like just absolutely dying to get into with both of you is the advocacy work that you both have found yourself kind of dedicating a very large chunk of your lives to. But before we get to that, I would love to just check in and see if we have any good questions that have come in from any of the listeners at home. And if so, we can tackle one or two of those right now.
That's great. Actually, we've gotten a couple of questions, and one is directed to Natasha and one is directed to Virginia. So
Amazing.
There you go. And Natasha, if you could, Virginia spoke earlier about the changes over time and how things, how she modified her approach. Given your age at which you were diagnosed and where you are today in terms of your life, how would you say things have changed for you as you've gotten older, your support system changes, etc.? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, so for me, definitely the progression of my disease changed. It definitely got better. So that was great. I also cared more about my arthritis. I think before I was just relying on my parents to learn about my arthritis, and when my mom told me to read about it, I was like, you can read about it. So she just kept researching and finding things for me. But I've now gotten into kind of research and advocacy work, and I find that that's kind of where my passion is for. So in that sense, like, what my interests have changed more. Before I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this, and now I actually want to learn about how we can help others. In terms of like support systems, that's changed as well. I didn't know anyone that had arthritis when I was diagnosed, so there was always like, I'm feeling alone, like I don't know anyone, why do I have this, can this go away, all of those questions. And from my advocacy work, and I have a podcast as well, I've met so many other young people with arthritis that now I can just text someone or call someone and be like, hey, what did you do in the kitchen for when you had to like lift something up and it hurt your hands? Like, can you tell me how to navigate that? And so in that sense, my support system has changed as well.
That's amazing. Terrific. Thank you. Virginia, the question is, it sounds like Virginia might have developed fibromyalgia after surgery. Has she looked into that? So you choose how you wish to answer that. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a big distinction between myofascial pain and fibromyalgia. I think fibromyalgia is more a whole body, where mine is on my upper back, the whole upper top of my upper back, more on the right side. So I don't know if they would consider that fibromyalgia. They've diagnosed me with myofascia.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah. Natasha, something that I'm curious about in hearing your answer there is how much has your arthritis and your experience with that influenced the school path that you're on? Are you in you're in biomedical sciences? Is that did I read that right?
Yes, you did. It's influenced it a lot. The only reason why I want to go into healthcare and hopefully medical school in the future is because of my own lived experience, because of the doctors that I've talked to, my own healthcare experience. That's kind of shaped what I want to do. Like, I want to be a doctor that understands what patients are going through with my own lived experience. So it's heavily influenced that. I think before grade 11, I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. Like, my mom was like, maybe a French teacher, maybe a singing teacher, maybe, like, I was just really confused. And I think my diagnosis has really shaped what I want to do career-wise, which is, it's great in a way, but also, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And to that exact point, it's also driven you to start your own nonprofit called Take a Pain Check Foundation, which also there's a companion podcast that goes along with that, Take a Pain Check. Tell us a little bit, as podcasters, it's always interesting to talk to fellow podcasters. What was the decision to start a podcast about pain, and how has that journey kind of been for you? Has it been, I take it, for us, I can say it's been most definitely been a huge learning opportunity for us to have conversations like this on a week-to-week basis. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, so originally I was scared to post on social media or even advocate for myself. So I never came to the point where I was like, I'm going to start advocating for others and post on my Instagram something about arthritis. Like, it's just, I wasn't ready for that. And it sort of just slowly happened. I developed a podcast, and the name Take a Pain Check, I think basically everyone can relate to it. You know, you want to take a rain check, but this time it's because you have pain and you're dealing with fatigue and you just want to break. So that's kind of what happened after the podcast started to roll out. I had a lot of researchers and patients that were my age reach out to me, and the researcher was like, I've never heard a patient talk about their experience. Like, we hear something on that side of the table, and they're saying something completely different. So after kind of the feedback that I got, I wanted to make it a nonprofit because a lot of patients want to actually meet other patients. And I think Virginia can talk about what she does. But yeah, so I decided to make a nonprofit where we have ambassador programs just to make content. So we have like a TikTok page. We make like chronic illness jokes and just social media content to support young people living with rheumatic diseases and chronic illnesses. So it's been super rewarding, especially after seeing all the feedback that I've gotten from other people. I've made a lot of friends. You mentioned it's like a learning curve, but I think I've also learned so much that I can basically find another doctor if I need to. Like, I can talk to people. The compression gloves that I brought the other day, someone from South Africa that lives with arthritis on my team told me about it, and it's been life-changing. So it's just, I'm getting so many tools and resources out of the organization and the podcast, which has been great.
That's
Cool.
very, very cool. I love that. Virginia, I know that, with your story, there's a segment of the time of your life where you were dealing with pain in secret, trying to keep it from people in your life. Tell us a little bit about that, and how you shifted from keeping it secret to, putting it out into the open and sharing your story.
Sure. I would say for at least the first 5-6 years, I didn't tell anybody. And I don't even know if my family knew. I think they knew I was getting back to work and maybe the shoulder was getting better. You just don't share because there's such a stigma around pain, and people aren't going to believe you. People are going to figure you don't want to work, you're lazy, or is it really that bad? So I just didn't. And one year I went to the Canadian Pain Society, was here in Halifax, and they set up an afternoon, a workshop for sharing your stories. I was typically a quiet person and didn't get up and talk and that. So we did this workshop, and I just really embraced how important it is to tell our stories. And I got up and I shared my story, and I have now shared my story with when the Canadian Pain Task Force was here, at conferences, presenting at IASP constantly. I guess that's all I do now is talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, then I go on committees like with the Nova Scotia Parental Pain Working Strategy. And a lot of these, and with Pain Canada and Atlantic Mentorship Network, it's about sharing your story, letting them know what's really happened. What do we need? And with the peer support, I'm hearing from other people, kind of like Natasha kind of has a peer support thing going there, and I've got a peer support in a different way. Ours is peer support groups, and you're hearing what's really happening. And 10 years later, it's still happening. It's still not good.
What did you? What was it like when you talked for the first time about it? Or like when you talked about it in front of a group of people? Like, how did you feel?
Hard. So there was a physiotherapist here. After I did that, the next week later, the physiotherapist here, I live in the Annapolis Valley, had an education afternoon. So I knew the physiotherapist was putting it on. I said, can I open it? She's like, yeah, okay. So I went, actually, my physiotherapist that I went to, and we sat together, and then I got up and I opened it, and nobody had any idea why I was there or I had pain. And I just opened it, and I basically welcomed there, told them I live with pain, and took about 10 minutes how bad it was living with pain. And it's them being at these things that are going to make a difference. And everybody just kind of looked at me, and that was the hardest, but then it just got easier and easier and easier.
It's always so, I just, the thought that came up in my head is I just remember, actually Jeremy and I met doing a yoga teacher training over a decade ago now, and in Brazil, and we were in this the training was starting, and we were all sitting in a circle, and we were all kind of sharing what were we here for, what was our sort of motivation for coming, and what were we hoping to get out of the training, and all this stuff, and and the circle's going around. All I could think of is like, you're not even listening to anything that anybody's saying, because because it's coming around to you, and you're just like, oh my God, what am I gonna say, and what's good and everything, and then speaking and really for the first time being vulnerable about myself to a group of people, and like how, and in hindsight, I know that my voice was probably shaking, and I spoke probably at 1,000 miles an hour, but like just after that experience of sharing that, like, oh my God, it feels really, you kind of walk through life for a long time. A lot of people, I think, can resonate with this, thinking that being vulnerable about your life and things that you're going through is like a weakness and something that you should rein back, and like, other people don't want to hear this, I don't want to be a burden, or whatever it is. And then you share it, and and you realize, oh my God, there's people out there that feel the exact same way, and that this is helpful for them, and it's and you feel really great about sharing that, and it's like a weight off your shoulders, and you feel lighter, and
vulnerability is a superpower.
Totally.
It's powerful. Virginia, tell us about People in Pain Network.
The People in Pain Network is a nonprofit network. It is about peer support. Pain Summit. So we was originated in BC. We have now, over the last 3 years, have it as a society within Nova Scotia, and run it out of Nova Scotia, and are running peer support groups within Nova Scotia, and some virtual online, and had people nationally join. But our peer support groups it's pain self-management. We offer a balance between education and support, and our members like that. They like to continue to learn. We are blessed that we have a lot of healthcare professionals who said, yeah, I'll come and speak. Just tell me when you want to come. With virtual, you can Zoom them in, and we have 3 virtual groups. We actually have a group that is specifically for young adults, but they like the education, they like the connecting. People get to know each other.
Yeah,
it's nice. People laugh, and then you're going to learn and ask questions. And
what is a pain self-management group? Is this kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, kind of. We literally put ours as a pain self-management peer support. So it's not like going in your classes under healthcare professionals. And the reason we do that, instead of just saying a pain support group, people are weary about support groups. I think people are sitting around a circle and chit-chatting or growling and complaining. So we like to put that self-managed balance between the education, so people know this is what the conversations are monitored as much as can be free, but it's about positive. It's about learning, and they'll sit down every now a few months and say, okay, I want to learn about this topic, nutrition. I get this, why will if I eat something, or that I get pain. So we'll get a dietitian to come in, or we had a pharmacist the other day come in, of compound medications, just things they want to learn.
Cool. Yeah. To that point about support groups, like when I was growing up, again, I'm 34. So like social media, I remember the time before social media. And I remember watching social media evolve, up to what it is today. And I recall, like, as someone living with cystic fibrosis, hopping on a couple of like CF Facebook groups, or peer support groups that are on certain forums and stuff. And I was one of those people that just like, I despised them. I didn't find it helpful at all. I found it to be kind of like gloom and doom, like really bummed me out. And it just wasn't something that I found I gleaned any kind of positivity from. But at 34 now, looking at social media, the social media landscape is very, very different. And Natasha, I'm kind of curious, you're our resident Zoomer here with us. So, I'll avoid asking you what the cool Zoomer terms are right now. I've already got bussin' under my belt. And devious lick. Those are 2 that I know.
Whoa, I don't know that one.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it after. It's great. So I'll save that for off air. But I am curious about your experience with social media, things like Instagram and TikTok. The social media platforms that really have evolved quite a bit over the last few years, and things that I didn't have access to when I was your age. But I feel like if I was your age now, they would be places that I would be turning to find support, or to feel, to get that dose of like, I'm not alone, or to see other people's experiences. So How has social media played a role in your life as a young person when it comes to managing your illness?
Yeah, apparently, if you now search up hashtags and the disease, like you can basically find support very quickly, which is
Hmm.
crazy to me because I didn't even know that. And people were like, you search up hashtag fibromyalgia, hashtag rheumatoid arthritis, and there are a bunch of people with their posts and their TikToks, their reels, just giving you information in like 60 seconds. And the thing is, with young adults now, our attention span is very small. So
Hmm.
watching your like 60-second to 3-minute TikToks is like the most information that you can really retain. And so in that sense, like I've learned a lot. And then it's just trendy, funny, like it kind of keeps me in a good mood, but you can also go down that rabbit hole, which is super negative. And I found
Hmm.
that on Facebook initially when I was diagnosed and I was researching kids getting arthritis, it was just parents of kids making these,
Hmm.
and it was like I couldn't find anyone, and I only knew Facebook at that time that could potentially have that. I didn't know there was like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, like Snapchat, all these apps that I could use. And so when I got into that, it was like a whole community that I never knew existed, which was
Mm.
amazing. And just seeing other people kind of coming in and giving their videos, their posts, their like 5-10 second blurbs, and they do Instagram live stream events. You can get on there and take a pain check, like we've been doing that as well. I just find that people can come in quickly. We also do like something called a joint chat room. So it's like we play like arthritis bingo and like just things like
Yeah.
just to, like lighten up the mood, and we do that over social media. We have like Discord, and
Mm.
it's a great time to kind of educate yourself but also lighten up the mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like with hashtags and stuff, I mean, there's probably such a volume of content that you can kind of like pick your lane of how you want to, like what sort of lanes of the discussion you want to
Yes.
pay attention to.
Yeah.
You know, because for some people maybe commiserating is
Yep.
helpful in some
Yeah.
way, and then
It
if you want
is,
to go down
yeah.
a more comedic path, then you can find that content. And,
You just let the algorithm do the work, and then it'll lead
that's
you where
right.
you want to
Yeah,
go.
just watch like 5 videos and then you're good.
That's it. I'm curious, and this is a question open to both of you. You know, Sickboy began at its core as a comedy podcast. Humor, you know, comedy. Those have played a really important part in my life as like an alternative therapy, and I'm wondering how and if humor has kind of played a role in your journey in terms of managing what it is that you're both going through.
I think humor is huge. I think humor, you just got to be able to be light. You got to laugh at it. We've actually even had a comedian come into one of our support group meetings one year for Christmas Zoom.
Awesome.
I think it's huge. I think it's a part of keeping things down. How about you, Natasha?
Yeah, I think same here. It's definitely hard though to be happy and stuff when you live with a chronic illness, but balancing it, knowing that sometimes you have to be serious and you have to figure out what you're going through, but also you can have some fun, and it doesn't just have to be I live with this condition and my life's over. So it's been really helpful. Yeah, and I find that a lot of people with pain feel much better when they're laughing and doing
Yeah.
things that they like, and yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer, I'd love to check back in and see if perhaps we have another question or two before we sort of come to the end here.
Most definitely. We actually have a comment as well as another question for our panelists. So the comment is Natasha and Virginia, you are both inspiring in your pain advocacy. Thank you. This individual says, I live in New Brunswick and have had to find ways to deal with my pain on my own. I have lupus, osteoarthritis, and fibromyalgia. My rheumatologist watches inflammation markers in my blood, but I have been largely on my own to deal with the pain. It took me 5 years to get my pain team together: massage therapists, acupuncturists, naturopathic doctor, and others who provide yoga, Pilates, mindfulness, meditation, craniosacral therapy. Plus, I've taken on the task of researching nutrition and autoimmune disease, example, anti-inflammatory diet. we need interdisciplinary pain clinics across all of Canada. And that's an amazing comment.
Well said.
Question for you is, are there groups specific to types of pain causes, pardon me? For example, is the work that Natasha does just for young people or young kids with rheumatological pain, or is it beyond that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because after the CBC documentary went out, a lot of older people that are not my target demographic, but I also don't want to discriminate, everyone lives with pain, came up to me and said like they wish they had support as well. So I'm currently trying to get them involved in the organization. So it's not solely a young person based organization. It was, but not anymore. So if you are interested in getting involved, just search up Take a Pain Check and you can reach out to me. It's rheumatic diseases, but we do have people with just general chronic illnesses that are ambassadors and want to make contests, content creation, things like that. So definitely you can get involved. Doesn't matter how old you are.
Very cool.
And juvenile arthritis, you know, it's not like a turn 18 and it goes away thing, right? So like
it stays.
That would be amazing. I mean,
yeah, you just age out of it.
Natasha wouldn't be here. She would have been done with this last year.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Natasha.
I was going to say, yeah, it's really interesting that some people actually change it from juvenile to rheumatoid arthritis, but some people stick with just the juvenile arthritis. So it's a case by case basis. But yeah, no, honestly, anyone with a chronic illness can get involved.
Awesome.
And Virginia, with the work that you do, I take it that's pretty much open to a pretty broad demographic as well.
Absolutely, anybody. Pain is pain. So we don't individualize what type of pain. Pain is pain. And we have done is a young adult support group for just the young adults because their needs are different than ours. And now we have a young adult who comes to our evening group where it's all the older adults. I think our average age is probably mid 40s, late 40s, 50s. And then you get some up to 80s, whatever. But who comes up, but also goes to the young adults. And she said, can I go to both? I said, of course you can.
Yeah.
Different topics. So yeah, and being virtual, the support groups we went virtual when COVID hit. Was the last thing I wanted to do because I always felt in person was better. Our virtual group was taken off the most.
Yeah. I mean, we can speak to that. We only did interviews on our podcast in person. COVID hit, forced us to do it via Zoom, and now we can have a conversation with someone living in Zambia and be like, okay, cool. This is we're doing this. This is great.
I honestly don't even know where the podcast would have gone if COVID didn't force us.
Wouldn't have went very far. We're coming up to the end here, and I want to be mindful of time. But before I get to our final question, which is for both of you, there's one more thing that I'm kind of curious about. And again, this is coming from my own perspective as someone who lives with illness. Although chronic pain isn't really in my wheelhouse with dealing with cystic fibrosis, there is one thing that I think kind of relates to everybody who's going through something when it comes to their body or their health, especially when it's something that is so all-encompassing. For myself, living with cystic fibrosis, there's been a really big tie to how my CF kind of plays a role in my own self-identity. And I'm kind of curious as to how your pain has affected your self-identity, or how you identify when you look at your pain as a part of you.
That's a tricky one. I don't know if I look at my pain as a part of me. It's just there. I do know with the pain and developing pain, my life changed, my social circles changed.
Yeah.
And it impacted my self-esteem, impacted everything. Your friends leave, and once they leave, they don't come back. And once you can't, like I used to play soccer or marathon run, well, it's done with now. So it changed things, but your circle changed, and it takes time, but it gets there. It gets you find people who are understanding if you have to cancel the last minute or if you can't make something. So I guess I'm gonna say it is really a part of your life. Yeah. Because it changes things.
How about you, Natasha?
That is a tricky question. I agree with what Virginia said, though. Like, it is part of your life. I wouldn't say, it is part of your identity because now you live with it. But it's definitely tricky when it's an invisible disability because people can't see it. And so it's it's been a bit of a challenge to, explain it to people, and then things change in life as you move on into life. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think where that question comes from, and this is something that I've kind of spoken to before, and I'm only saying this to perhaps maybe it will resonate with one of you or one of the listeners at home who are dealing with pain. But we've heard on the podcast many people say that they would never want their illness to define them, which I think is completely reasonable. But as someone who's lived with CF, which is a genetic disease, so I was born with it. I've had it my whole life. I don't know anything, I don't know any different. I always say that I allow CF to define me, but I let it define me on my own terms, which I think there's something about that makes me feel like I have a power over my disease, over what it is that I'm going through, that if I didn't have that power, then I'd probably relate to my illness a lot differently. So it's always interesting for me to talk to people who are living with something that is taking up so much of their life, and just to see how they relate to it, in terms of how they relate to themselves. But thank you for those answers. That was really thoughtful.
We released the episode a few days ago with a guy named Dylan, and he said something to the effect of like, I don't want my disease to define me, but I want to be able to make space for it,
yes,
and like make space around it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that I can deal with it and let it influence me in a healthy way. And I think going back to something that you both resonated with, or both spoke to, which is like, the ability to say no when it's not going to be conducive to the way that you're going to feel the next day, or whatever it might be. And like making that healthy space for like the right decisions for you to be taken, that are going to help you be kind of like the best version of you within the experience of living with pain, or whatever it is that somebody might be dealing with.
So I'd love to get to our final question. It's a two-part question for each of you. So I'll start with you, Virginia. We'll go through both, and then we'll move on to you, Natasha. This is a question that we asked most of our guests on the podcast. The first part is, Virginia, what would you say is the biggest thing that your pain has taken away from you?
Wow. Well, initially I thought it was my career, but after a little bit of acceptance and knowing there's a change, I think, I don't know, I thought too, not being able to do the sports and the running was, it was the end of everything in my career. I guess the biggest impact has been on my people who I thought were friends, but it's just a change. It's okay. It's just changed, Okay, so I can't do certain things, but I can do other things. If they were meant to be friends and going to be with you, and they're not. So I think I've come to another part. Is it really, taking things, or have I really just grown?
What would you say is the biggest thing that it's given you?
Oh my gosh, the biggest thing it's given me is this sort of thing, these connections with these lovely people, meeting people like Natasha, you guys. There's so many people like Natasha out there who are just so lovely and who've come so far. And people go to our support groups, people who work with stuff. They're just, it's amazing. It is just amazing, the people I've met on this journey.
Natasha, what's the biggest thing that your pain has taken away from you?
My ability to do chemistry questions, and just because it's so physical, and like my hands are flaring here and there. My ability to do my homework, I know that sounds so sad, but it's the truth.
Hey, it's a better excuse than your dog ate your homework. I mean, let's be real. What would you say is the biggest thing that it's given you?
Exactly what Virginia said. This whole community, also, it's helped me shape what I want to do in the future, and then given me opportunities to do research on my own condition and just get some papers out there, and just a lot of advocacy and research work, which has been amazing.
Well, to both of you, I want to say thank you so much. This has been such a treat for Taylor and myself to get an opportunity to be a part of a conversation like this. You've both been wonderful guests, and we commend you for the work that you do as advocates, and for the work that you've done tonight by being vulnerable and sharing your stories. Again, Virginia is the director of People in Pain Network. If you want to know more, go to www.pipain.com. And for Natasha, Take a Pain Check is the podcast that is out It is available wherever you find podcasts, and I highly suggest you go subscribe and leave a rating and review, because that's very important for our podcast families out there.
Do we know it?
Thank you all so much, and to Pain BC, thank you for having us here. This has been so fun. We were honored that you reached out and asked us to be a part of something that is so vitally important, and we're rooting for you and hoping to see this exact same conference happen again, year and year again, over the future. So thank you all so much for having us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Where do you begin? It's all I can think of is wow. Thank you, Sickboys podcast members, Jeremy Saunders and Taylor McGilvery. Pardon me, Taylor. And of course, pardon me.
You nailed it.
Thanks. And of course, your guests, Virginia McIntyre and Natasha Trehan, for this terrific session, your incredible insights, and on your terms. I heard that loud and clear. I found that really insightful. What a learning curve, isn't it? Tasha said earlier. I mean, it's each and every one of your thoughts. We had terrific insight coming from the audience. We didn't have necessarily an opportunity to cover everything, but there's a couple of comments that I can add in, just because this is directed to Sickboys and the group. Comment for Jeremy and Taylor: I have to say your dog is adorable. And this is relevant because actually my dog is my emotional support animal, and she is a part of my pain treatment program.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're pretty amazing, those little creatures.
Oh my
His
God.
name is Donut, for anyone who is curious. Yeah.
Extra
Okay.
cuteness points for the name.
And you know what? I would love to take a moment here just to say this before people hop off. I know just from hearing the questions that there's probably quite a few people listening that are going through their own experiences, you know, whether those be similar to or different from Virginia and Natasha. And we, you know, our entire podcast revolves around having these types of conversations with people who are living with any and all manner of illness, or, you know, any kind of issues that have to do with our bodies and our health. And so if there's anybody listening right now who feels like they have a story that they are willing to share, be a guest. Come be a guest on our show. Go to sickboypodcast.com. There's a big white button on the top right that says be a guest, and we'd love to have you on the show. We're always looking for new conversations, so feel free to invite yourself into our studio, because we're more than welcome to have you.
Thanks for that, Jeremy. And now it's hard to believe, but I'm the fortunate steering committee member who gets to say goodbye to everybody today, and to thank everyone for this incredible 4-day journey, for this inaugural conference of putting the pieces together. Pretty amazing when you think of that. An inaugural conference was opened by Minister Bennett, who announced an over $5 million funding to make many powerful speakers we've had, informing us all week long, giving perspective on each and every one of their experiences. We've heard about pain advocacy, how far it's come, where it's come from, and how far it's come, but also where it's going. I'd like to, you know, I can't name each one of them, but I'd like to thank each and every one of the speakers, attendees to today's sessions, and frankly, all week long. It's been amazing, including the gentle movement sessions. The water cooler chats that have happened have been quite inspiring. The steering committee members, and importantly, all the individuals who attended this conference and who have made it the success that it has been. We would absolutely love to have you respond to the survey about the conference, so that the organizers can continue, to your point, Jeremy, can continue to build future possibilities for more putting the pieces together conferences. The videos, as we've said, I mean, most sessions, or all sessions, have been videotaped, and they will be posted on Pain Canada's website. So please go back and visit them again. I think I, for one, will be revisiting them just to learn more. And as we wrap up this incredible week, I invite you to consider a call to action, to invite each and every person here to help amplify the voices, the perspectives of people with lived experience, and truly to leverage our unique knowledge and experience for the betterment of enriching research outcomes and healthcare initiatives. And on that note, take care, everyone, and thank you so much.